Thank you for coming this evening. Today is our anniversary. Birthday.
Into the microphone.
Today's our anniversary. Bertie, it would be 23 years today. Happy birthday, Bertie. I miss you, and I love you. For those of you who don't have a program, I'm going to tell you that the characters Elmo and Winifred Pearl are Bert and Zelma. And during their last 3 years, she wrote a weekly Zelma's Farm Poetic podcast and 2 Zelma's Mothership books. They are a TV concept, a poetic story. And he'd always say, every week, tell me another story, my darling. Everyone on the farm calls me Queen Gemma, or your divine grace, and address my letters to your majesty. I wear royal law rings on each of my dainty perticky toes, and I love to grant their requests out of the abundance of my heart. For we are not perfect or polished and pretty animals. God has gifted all of us, even the ones who are bulbously overweight and blushingly marginalized, with only integrity GEDs, to keep our hearts open and dream as we crisscross paths with you being kind. My perpetual grandeur, fine, feathery, flashy color apparel, with limousine glittering trim and sparkling ornamentation, is a Ritz hotel feeling that doesn't unravel. I put a Nobel 100-watt light maverick smile on that others can't resist, or even help treating me differently. They just don't know why they do it. Aunt August wore Queen Anne's lacy, dainty trimmed frills that widely draped the edge of the farm's lily pond skirt. The bulging bullfrogs coarsely croaked there with a flat drawl through furrowed grins. Their thick rubber lips smacked as rhythmic springs, and a wheeled tongue and a long shot licked up a particularly juicy and decidedly crisp, waffle textured dragonfly, thoroughly enjoyed by having donked and then swallowed them whole, followed by the last of the monarch, butterfly brew slurry enticed before entering en route to Mexico. The farm's hen house was actually a charm school where Gemma's array of pretty, lengthy, smoothly practiced and cream prick-up feathers broke out of their prim, proper, and acceptable routine into a new petty phrase, ostentatiously exceeding their private expectation, to now perform as Miss Guarded Feathers. Once being airborne, they would lunge forward and then dive from behind, being all worked up by a comic drawl of whirling, wily, double flip-back somersaults. Someone, likely the superior-minded geese, tipped off the hen house as to why they were worked up and generally gruff and grouse about being all mixed up now. Together at the farm's full-color lenses finishing school. Elmo kissed Winifred Pearl in the rain. It was transmitted in their language as she reread those love letters. She clucked her tongue in a doldrum of satisfaction that came in last and stopped her in her tracks, because she and Elmo's new beginnings always started with small steps. Everything will be all right, was fighting and pushing back with shucking and jiving in light shifting winds that wandered through days and weeks and seasons. Daystar couldn't sit on his broken stool because of his impact. So he stood by the barn window every day thinking, what I do today will be my legacy. I didn't skip telling the truth. I need the stool permanently fixed. Gracie Cheer sat on the box seat of Joel's cart. It cushioned her from the shaking and jerking of their long road trip, straight through the open floor of a crimson leaf carpet. She trusted him. Joel knew the way through the narrow, unnerving moments of tight uncertainty and urgent, messy, everyday problems, and out of the thick mud of appealing things that might cause her to lose sight of a passionate desire to be Wonder Girl and rise up every hour with the love of justice. Joel's survival began heavy lifting and took a load off by dropping the adulting. And Joel asked Gracie Cheer, "Who are you going to grow up to be?" Suddenly, in her divine comedy, Gracie Cheer faced unmade plans with her scarred head down. Then, shaking her head, turned and looking back, she collapsed from the inside to fit along with Molly. They were packed between two bench seats and prepared for climbing with Joel's impact on them. His cart's front end was a thinking machine with strong and true attributes that navigated life's circular track. Everything would be okay and safe with Joel. They were gonna make it. They weren't lost. Were drifting, looking for tomorrow as Joel drove 2 hours and surprisingly it seemed 3 days with the inner circle of brothers and sisters squeezed as priorities on 2 bench seats. Couriers and mixmasters for Elmo and Winifred Pearl's 22nd wedding anniversary. Winifred Pearl dressed. As Winifred Pearl looked up into Elmo's white-hot, cold, glowing eyes, she wanted to say something special to the special man in her life who kept getting wiser and wiser. Her thick rubber lips parted for a deep southern accent, carrying incredible admiration. They were words of life to him. His protector held her vulnerability in his sturdy arms and blew away the fragile insecurity like dandelion block. He keenly mitigates her debt of speechless gratitude that showers down on him, using his gifts gained in life knowledge and heart-grown wisdom. It was summer, and Winifred Pearl was running out of her garden favorite perfume. No one knew she wanted something for fragrant pond soaps. When God showed up as Elmo, wearing glasses that could look at what's in her life, he wobbled along down the pond shoreline, persevering to the sandy water's edge, where the shelf life had no expiration date, and soon with affection said, "Winifred Pearl, I don't know if you'll like this perfume, but you are the heart of the matter." Wow! Now that's what I mean to him, she chortled. And it was the greatest thing for the circle of friends world to see that he loved their mother. It made a direct impact that was immeasurable. The circle of friends' dads are turned by love into adventurous storytellers and songwriters that rise out of the barnyard circumstances. There was no joke like a clean Elmo joke, and no goodbye airport squeeze like his, or a storyteller that runs out of favorite comedies like going to antique shops or on dirt roads shows playing a junk band. Remember sitting with Gracie Cheer at church, and suddenly Evangelina's all jumping around praising and her fro wig fell off? That was so funny. And if her hoof pinched, that's because there's no laughing at church, and a double pinch now. Well, that's meaning the devil's pitchfork, because God's trusting in her with his kids. chips in speeches. You should have seen the farm before God sent Elmo to work on it. His actions and circumstances embellished others who spread out and grow and reveal who he is. Fiona sees beyond obstacles with a #1 mission's eye on possibilities, then steps into opportunities God's given her to trust him. She's even learned how to cross stony paths, ride pond waves with jumping bullfrogs, and play hard woodwinds with satisfaction and fulfillment. Father, Dad, I really appreciate my lifestyle. Fiona loved how God spent time teaching her what he knew or dreaming, even talking with her. Fiona's 2 recent questions brought tears to God's eyes. God, you look so good. And then, how are you? And finally, tell me about your new projects. He let her watch him do them, and that touched Fiona's heart. Thanks, God, that you were my father. God's fatherhood was a job he'd never lost on the farm for 3 generations. He's been willing to be a persistent, honorary best man with the evening reminders to do the math work and remember, it's pizza night. The long days of spring stretched their positive possibilities across Bertie Blue Sky's life canvas, while a winter storm waited for springtime's new landscape. The myriad of colorful flowers melted as gumdrops in his wide open eyes, and the heads of the polished snowdrops plunged into the clear noonday that was more than he could imagine, held sway in the shining day's beauty and goodness. He caught the magnificent color in a flashpan's ray popping off the pages of his sketchbook before they faded on the horizon's sweet ride. The farm was a magnificent environment for safety that uncovered his artistic opportunities, and they were getting better already as Bertie Blue Skies dared to experience the fresh season in the company of hope. God saw Bertie Blue Skies and cared to make a way. He orchestrated encouraging circumstances which made a perfect encore in the long game of latitude and longitudinal time. A beautiful slip of a pearl hidden in a shoddy and matted calico fur coat of insignificance, with one attentive eye watched as God's finger of love traced a noonday message. Just because I love you. Through a rainbow, and suddenly in the wide open skies of hope, her sadness evaporated in the rocking motion of the warm rains, which took God seriously, because without them, nothing grows. Yours, truly, Adelaide thought, I'll never marry a country boy who drives a farm truck. And little red Jeep's the way to go. She had left a junkyard bag of broken Chip's life in an off-site storage of a dark caterwaul past, and with a shrug hissed a supercilious goodbye that held its breath in overtones forever, and zoomed out the back door. What's the #1 reason Winifred Pearl woke up? To test. Will everything still work, including her, in 6 days? She got emotional. She was tired of returning animal calls, furiously scratching out messages, and working 7 days to get more done. Her strength was challenged and shriveling. Elmo had no socks left, and only 1 pair of underwear with a t-shirt on his pot-belly chest of drawers. He needed more than just his pig skin for coaching work. Winifred Pearl couldn't scrum them out fast enough on a washboard, and for Winifred Pearl it was yesterday. Regrets for not making better decisions had staked their claim over her healthy heart. For 22 years, Elma was a good husband to snuggle up with and understand things she wouldn't have. She and Elma weren't weak, untested, or useless. They'd grown and changed, waking up to brand new hearts. Elma forgave easily and coaxed away her periodic fits of striving with peace and less work. So Winifred Pearl took one day to enjoy and share it with a circle of friends writing and making their own music. Maybelline and Lady opened their mouths and sang. We are all getting up there, you know, so life looks bigger than we can imagine. And it's become an oratorio with a symphony. In the middle of the large oak tree, Elmo had carved with his old West 6-shooter gun their colorful nicknames: E loves WP forever. In the spring of 1999, and with no jaw-dropping apology, the pouring rain set in after he proposed under it in 2005. It became their cool love memory. The bursting red squirrels had populated the sweltering tree house, who were driven nuts, scurrying to host their undeterred family gatherings in a cluttered single-light room with a supersonic thunder emitted a warning that shook them. Wake up! It's Christmas! With eyes popping and lids flipping answered, what? As lightning struck their oak tree. After all the commotion, Elmo jostled into an action-picked figure who carved out by hook a bench for them to picnic in the late summer. Winifred Pearl had made little box lunches packed with quarts of cold milk to gulp down and 12 hand sandwiches with the crusts cut up. She's still a decent cook, rose like the brightest star out of Elmo's mind. He had tenderly sketched their names like a picture inside it. He's so sappy romantic. Winifred Pearl happily thought as she dusted off the remaining crumbs along with the leaves and then swept up the acorns that were scattered all over the floor. Everything's in order now. Bruce was Gracie Cheer's favorite grandmother, who came through the sky's windshield with flying colors. Was it because I prayed for God to guide her wings? They paint in simple, broad brush strokes murals of victory. From an unnamed mountain, as a squadron of chunk dust. From an unnamed mountain, a squadron of chunk dust danced up and down, cheered by crazy animals with fighting good attitudes, and all stirred up, making lively progress to get to the finish line in the farm summer marathon. They had taken hot clips and 50,000 steps, one hoof in front of the other, walking to a better future. There was power in every small step, moving forward, exercising on the dirt road. Daystar was the star athlete of the farm life. That is a team sport with track meets to love well today. Winifred Pearl was a doting mother figure with a mommy grip Daystar felt as he slowed down. He'd grown 7 times faster than the others had, given their 5 to 6 opportunities to see real time's life before them. The small 3-year-old had slept at the foot of her bed, tiptoeing if he must, and discovered, you are welcome in this world. Angelina popped up and out of the quiet sunrise poured excellent praise in darting rays that shouted, "Great are you, God." She stood a little closer to the fireplace. Her swirling eyes watched the flames struggling to spring forth and take part in a bigger crowd of flames and their refusal to give up. Each shaking flame reached for what seemed hard and wrestled under the crackling attacks of suppressed future warmth. Suddenly, from her tangled gray wool coat, lanolin slugs were streaming out into the pasture, making a muddy sound of hogwash before she could respond and make an immediate relief for her ears. Whenever Pearl plucked up the wad of notes the size of peas, they became a beautiful small song from insignificant beginnings with 26 alphabet letters and a melody with highs and lows of a musical day that was commissioned by a new choir director for the circle of friends, who were the same animals with a whole new sound and set of harmonies that practiced in their positions to be what they already were and learned in sequence they were accepted and not rubbish, singing out of tune, muddy and messy in a diminished performance. True, worthy, treasured truth, and honored, utterly keeping his word in all things and everyday choices. The benefits became standard for True Worthy Treasure, who returned extra change and wasn't duped by a shininess that crisscrossed otherwise in strips and paths through the glade of shifting doubt. God tossed into the sultry day pillow clouds. Ta-da! They went in the direction of Winifred Pearl's favorite time of day, story time. She loved to read or tell a story in a unique way, in the ebb and flow of the day. Happiness was stuck around on her kitchen floor, but she didn't hurry to mop it up. Whenever Pearl chose to be happy, so the circle of friends wanted to be around her thick-lipped smile. When she was lonely, much of the time Coach Zelma was gone, she chose to serve others in the animal community. Elmo was a good tired, wanting to hoof it out of an air corridor within a gusto of ice sheets. He didn't respond to the illicit music and pulled the knotted and matty downy covers over his head and mumbled from a backward L. "When you yell at me like that, it makes me feel like a broken window far, far away." And when he got up, Elmo plunged in and ordered from the leftover menu and loved slopping the stale, juicy stuff down. 5-year-old yours truly Adelaide yearned for a pathway of spring flowers smiling at her as she fled the next day from a yowling mother who was throwing things at her from the kitchen chairs. She'd run with tears in her eyes into the great roots of a strong prayer group held in a cellar. Yours truly Adelaide hid under Elmo's sturdy armchair, where someone mattered to him there. She wasn't afraid as Elmo's huge hook reached down and joined her tiny paw to collaborate. He couldn't see her, but in the stillness, he heard what was in her heart and focused from the inside to let her take her time to feel comfortable. Yours truly, Adelaide, discovered Elmo was disorganized and creative, and he wasn't impatient with tasks that are never done. When he was 5 years old, Elmo loved to cook. He was a hard worker and developed his hooves to be hand beaters that could make a batter from scratch rather than a box-caked mix. So you could really read a recipe directions? Yours truly, Adelaide, was amazed the cake stood on the soda bottle platform, displaying his goal of satisfaction and accented his independence excitement. While yours truly, Adelaide's love of jump ropes took her to the end of her rope's 15th tantrum that went in another door to celebrate her freedom from significant adversity because of her desperate prayer. Winifred Pearl and Elmo locked eyes in an intimate song that made them dance on the dirt floor. It was backed up by banjo and drum back tracks. They were falling in love many times, but always with the same pig, each other. The letters E-L-M-O were larger than life for Winifred Pearl. She climbed on the E and dived head over heels into the O, then leaned on her dream and took her picture with him as she celebrated over a future family cast by these letters, E-L-M-O. In a prologue overture, a snippet in a motion picture to come that got her spouse back. Winifred Pearl sprinkled love about everything for him. They had differences which made them unique partners. Elmo coached law, life was a team sport, and Winifred Pearl listened as she cuddled Grace. She appeared as a 6'8" girl with pigtails. I can't even brush my hair anymore because of Baby Day Star. She was overwhelmed by baby bottles, diapers, and disheveled mess that her hair was thrilled to be brushed from the mundane to the miraculous. Elmo and Winifred Pearl asked questions while seeking irresistible Lovett's understanding. He made the special effort to love every kid and look into their eyes that were longing for friendship. Winifred Pearl had taken inventory of a full pantry that affected relationships and the future. The greatest part of life was animals, naturally. She was an attractive model to others with her inviting, warm, fun atmosphere, which felt like blinking red lights all year long in her fresh earth shelter and harbor speckled with hope. She had created margins and spaces to love well today with Elmo, who didn't panic with interruptions. They made creative music and new songs, and walls came down because the underlying issue was, would Winifred Pearl's home provide lots of food for the hungry stampedes of teens whose hooves and paws were all greasy from the love of cheese? And it was worth the discovery. Winifred Pearl's childhood dream was to make a contribution to society because she had a servant's heart since 3 years old, and Elmo wanted the flock to be safe. He was a rugged sheep herder in overalls and not an aristocrat, Mr. High Pockets apple picker. He called Gracie Cheer, who was sitting on the kitchen floor sobbing. He'd never seen her crying that loud before. He called her to his side to comfort her because her most pressing issue was the briar patch headlines caught in the surrounding thistles of fear, pricking the down and out brown canes, not the wasteful ups and out husks, who first have to wake up from thinking it's okay to be bored. Winifred Pearl was faithful in the insignificant daily tasks and unapplauded for constantly putting the socks up, teaching table manners in the Habit House, poring over spelling words and exacting demand to count what's best with the little kiddos in the homeschool skilling room. The rough farm's tyranny of long hours and blistering hard labor work, staying up half the night with a feverish lamb spitting out some vague birdseed punctuated in sheer panic. Winifred Pearl's vast, unstoppable wild nature, unseen by the circle of friends' eyes, gave her depth in the gaunt silence, where no one checks on me, tending the spotted sheep. Winifred Pearl was perched on the porch in brilliant colors, shining in gemstone hues of exotic chutney glaze. She had plopped on the couch of a bayside cottage where great nearness stretched over a soothing blank space, and the theme of relentless love softly strummed and plucked the magical small triumphs from the portals of the picturesque as she drank the burst of goodness in God's oozing holy delight. Winifred Pearl's smile lacked a luster. Elmo cupped his prime multi-generational farmer. She was silent before him as her falling, burning dreams, too fast to handle, came off the top of a hill in the dark. Elmo felt the seemingly knotted travails in her way with, "Hold on to me, I've got you." Life had intimidated and worn her out with the intellectual attraction to the beautiful thing of an influencer in a lifetime of cradles, cribs, formula bottles, diapers sitting by the window like ducks in a row. If the earth was so pretty on the outside, 2-year-old Death Star's wonder blasted in, what did Winifred Pearl look like on the inside? He bleated sheepishly 3 words to God. Winifred Pearl, tired, heal her. He was the light, she was the light of his life, and what she did mattered. Gracie Shear said, "I like your costume, to love it." He had put on his statesman's jacket and become captain of his own squadron of superhero buddies. Lovett's heart was set free because God had turned his usable, non-technical weakness into a strength. He used his pa's great achievement to play the drums, and Lovett's slow calmness without worries, and his steady diligence were crafted in drumming and setting animals free from a fatiguing racket of multiplied gambling with selfishness to re-engage with others. Wearing a first prize blue ribbon and sprinkling her beauty all around, Winifred Pearl stood before the extended open-air's bathroom magical mirror she'd covered with cute lipstick kisses all around Elmo's picture framed with red emotions. What was in her that was infused with aroma? It was a joy that activated her laughter, which headed in a sandy beach directions of having a fun adventure pursuing Elmo. "Will you take me to the prom?" She practiced the questions all day long. It all started small, and then with a burst of dandelion glory, similar to gospel song, became a triple-throated reel. Elmo's been invited to the prom by a girl. His 15-year-old face rose and began examining. "Well, what's this thing? Looks like a mountain peak here." And there, standing out on a landscape of his ridged snout, was an unexpected explorer, a giant pimple. He tried covering it with a bronze glow mud mask makeover caked with band-aids. Elmo's delayed doubt sank in a sunset and wrinkled as darkened blue shadows cast faces of despair. He fought back at the suffocating clouds of uncertainty, throwing ice at him. He wasn't at home in his pigskin, with a blockbuster pimple trying to poke a hole in his extended happiness. Elmo was stuck with an inventory that capped or left behind his pimple issue when Gracie Cheer showed up to patch Elmo up with her distilled advice. "Don't compare yourself to other animals in heritage gray socks." "But I've decided not to go to the prom," Elmo sounded off. "This too will pass," was seared in his mind, and Winifred Pearl has a formula of strewing field flowers to soothe friction in places you can see. She's created on her seersucker apron, and she's created a haven with stacked light to run to, a destination she's taken time to fashion for the purpose of family gatherings and memorable picnics. Under her roof hospitality is the size of Lady's massive 9-pound heart, set free on the farm's frontier that loves to extend service to others in the big neighborhood. The circle of friends are living a new day to their fullest by taking limits to graze off their enjoyment of the field's intricate details and pastoral spreading care, along with the garden's growing benefits of ripe productivity rather is Mothership.com. The Muses and Dreams are published excerpts in poetic podcast selections, and they're based on a true UFO story. Brett and Zeah are Bert and Zelma. I'm reading from a collection entitled Muses and Dreams, and it's a tribute and a dedication to Bert, my late husband. You'll find I write deep and hard from a pain that will touch someone. And Christ takes it and transforms lives by his powerful gospel. You will find that in 1 Timothy 1:12 through 17. Zeah struggled out of a 20-year sequestered chrysalis in a provincial village within obscure green mountains. Her bohemian past raced toward a provocative moment that burst into a zealous comment, into an unassuming, open to possibilities, cave convention with Brett. She wore billowy chiffon mystique that lengthened out of his cracked sky, accepting her alluring spiral, which grew in immense intensity with tempting blue eyes pressed into his, a chocolate question. Sin with me. Brett's studio setting was dialed warm and ideally located. The leisurely atmosphere, a soft-pillowed sofa, and countless comfortable chairs with accommodating teacups facilitated the upsurge gaggle of lonely women, married to boredom and routine comforts, madness, desperate for validation and recognition of their significance. His sensitive scope of artistic imagination detected and empathized. Listening with sizable skill and combined charm, affirmed them over the years. He amassed a trove of iniquity, coming in assorted ages, shapes, and unregulated sizes, from the village recycle bin, dropping what they could afford in the donation can for weekly drawing class or streaming live with affectionate emails and cooing calls. The South Haver Real Bed and Breakfast Subculture Salon proprietress catered the intelligentsia and entertained the Marriage Westport and New York artists, forgetting to dress for the occurring occasions of groping through dense marijuana smoke entanglements and heavy-eyed casual encounters. The exclusive entrance to the Boys' Cave convention held their ego's secret code in a tight fist of Irish-Italian bonds that ultimately forced out Zeah's pure, unrestrained zeal, replacing it with a temporary, intolerant Zen mistress. There, in the boys' rotating layers of Retford, Bradley, and South Haverhill, was couched in their recoiling, thickly greased, heavily tattooed, shining bronze-skinned testosterone, seductively recoiling with thick-lipped smiles. Zeah's fresh love had silky tasseled, polished dreams hanging around her sheer, delightful, luxuriant intimacy, veiling the long, dark corridor, passing a lie. She was stunned, discovering she held equal value to every other Brett had arranged ties to. The exposed, unwelcome visitor ripped through the fragrant seams of skillfully embroidered years and violently opened, wildly whipping up hot, torrential tears, winds shrieking with unrelenting, boisterous grief, flooding her cracked, parched heart as the borders of their entombed love froze in winter's icy, armored realization. So Zeah's imagination retreated to the warm, glistening islands they had inhabited, with erupting, voluminous hot spots of Venice Beach, California, or Venice, Italy. Her runaway love escaped, tethered with voluminous cries in the intense heat of Arizona. Gingerly, Zeah flung open her heart, irresistibly, to the brazen rebel idol she worshipped, despite his double standard. she served him. Zeah wove her thick, strong love, twining it patiently with the fragile willow threads of her heart's new song, binding loose ends carefully into durable 22 life-size flexible free-form sculpture with Brett's charismatic singularity. When a time snapped their fine silver cord, Zeah careened beyond his reach into her prose vacuum, a sanctuary of security and safety among the tender green shoots of their early spring, May 1st love. Zeah's innocence flourished and flexed in amongst the promenade of nightly willow trees, secure shade. Her trusting bare feet weaving paths along the quiet river's velvet banks soon discovered what heartless others knew, and persisting ill winds carried. The cold, twisted screams wickedly ebbing in a cul-de-sac square where gnarled roots clutched a dormant dark secret it hurled, then pivoted and was buried inside the rich baritone voices of cursed generations huddled together under the pretense, while white church steeples rang in silence these 6 decades from the green mountains, cache of echoing sins. Enticed by shiny favors, patron crones bore childless convictions tucked down as they assumed elevated positions of deceived status. Rotating envy encircled their darkened eyes, focused on Brett's alone bright image. Squinting affection and drooling desires lunged to kiss his feet. Their knotted, earthy claws straddled the fragile gold bands bond, with a secret intent to sever Zeah's strong, curvy allure permeating Brett's rustic rendezvous. They stirred up her nest. The small closet's life was boxed, unhesitatingly dumped, along with unhampered jealousy on the garage's loading dock. The approaching autumn flushed in primary colors as Zeah's triumphant, unequaled love wildly roared over their hair-netted ideas caught between their bulbous legs. The double-minded hydras carried away the bundled rolls of quilted curtain insulation, partitioning their cold hearts from Zeah. Brett's loft walls were novel canvas collections of idiosyncrasies, stuffed into cluttered revolutionary progressive memorabilia that plastered dusty surfaces, clinging to idle change. Zeah's tripwire jingled, some change, in his deep cargo pant pockets falling off the tips. His mind drew networks intermingled with imaginative fine lines as sensitive fingertips read between intuition. His curious preponderance of history could proficiently airbrush philosophy while sifting the sciences that eliminated the queen, simultaneously stroking his furry chin as he firmly held radical, hard left politics. The rotation of beguiling mannequin posed as friends in broad daylight, dropping lines. Brett traced them in his fine artist's mind. His marinating underworld was filled with the skank cigarette sooty smiles, tantalizing cannabis cakes caught in their crooked teeth from overindulgence, spitefully spit Zeah out with a putrid belch. But the breath of heaven caught her beauty, rising out of the ashes, and the sun with scars kissed her scars tenderly. Brett skillfully sketched Zeah's sweeping tresses braided between torn away sheets and passionate verses nightly intertwined among the pond's cattail reeds, weaving with the bulging chested bullfrogs lustily croaking coarse-throated smooth nasally calls with virtually synchronized double-chinned captives, triple belly-roll belly fat bands, their Baywatch beauties. nightly soaked in deep vats of oozing cool mud. Zeah read her world elastically with a lens of hyper-interpretation, as her childhood's ripped pages were stuffed in loose-leaf chapters within non-binding relationships. Her bohemian sought after the enticing lure of the revolutionary nonconformist artist, ultimately bookending her transient rebel lives. The metaphysical Gypsy Joe clumsily carted their collapsing divided world of gurus, encounter groups into cardboard boxes, crashing off his godless pinnacle in a dilemma. But on the other hand, desperate enough Corinthian anarchists took hold of Brett's partiality towards Zeah, hurling her significance and ties to belonging into a crisis cardboard box of gargantuan proportion and dumped it into the looming stench of irreconcilable karma. Bread constellated in concentric circles with assemblages of non-conformist artists, political revolutionary, and the atheistic evolutionary science-minded. But he occupied Zeah's burning heart's position of unlimited influence as a brilliant star in her metaphysical sphere of structural machismo with a prominent pen skillful touch. They made circuitous retreat routes to sunbathe with assorted friendships consecutively overseas and among islands, discovering intimate peninsulas with dangling forbidden fruit. Zeah's anticipation was anchored there in energetic, exuberant waves of increasing joy. Her horizon, lost in Eden's staggering explosions of wanton wonder, resisted whimpering sleep. Her wide eyes couldn't miss his constellation and her heaven's perfect cluster of satisfaction infused with unmixed, everlasting, exhilarating newness. Bread fixed into fixed gold bands, Zeah's euphoric reality as his wife. It's their ripe moment that never ends in sheer fulfillment, marvel, despite the attending trials. Zeah trudged through deep winter's cold resistance, seeking glimpses of breath before sunset. Brett's core marks his weekly, boisterous breakfast group, divided politics, rich brashly clashed with forks and knives, cutting the fat of animal rights and mashed vegetarian views and dicey environmental personhood. But the stinging salt of Christianity was never past. Zeah was forever branded outcast for her unexpected conversion. Opting out, she held her wild card throughout compounding exasperation for Zeah's unrepentant sin of knowing the truth and amplifying her defection through her Silk Road journey into Russia. They choked on her gristle. She stuck like irritating grit on their gravy plates, exacerbating every bite. So Zeah was set apart. Brett's sharply pen-stained shirt pocket held crumpled ideas meticulously sketched out of their diner table's paper placemats over strong coffee party lines with divided strategies. Cracker crumbs mingled with cramped, braggadocious quarters in worn, faded jeans, tumbled head first into neatly stacked or tipsy towers in the architectural array of dishes left for their serving. Brett was a West Texas streamlined maverick jester, drawing the rebel, inked in long lines of libertarian handsome, fit in his gray suede jacket. Zeah wore quintessential Western wavy, chic, invisible, license, posed in a string bikini with fringe ties to his suede jacket, thrusting out their heart. Thank you for coming this evening and sharing my tribute